It took me 2 hours to get to this point. Timing belt Amazon eBay kit sucks. Let me explain what happened. Welcome to part 3 of the Lexus LS400 rust bucket assembly and motor swap. So we're going to do the timing, we're going to take it off, look at all the problems and potential issues. You see this is all rusted. My hope was that I could just run the motor like this until I pulled off the covers and saw this. So last video showed us kind of cleaning a little bit because there's just a ton of corrosion, white powder and stuff all over the place. And then last week I ordered the $70 Chinese timing belt kit, and I'm already disappointed because, long story short, I'm not going to be able to complete the timing belt. And I knew this would happen. I just knew it. So the kit itself, I mean, it looks fine. You know, quality looks okay. I'm sure everything will work. The water pump is definitely better condition than the stuff we have on the car now. The timing belt, I was expecting like a plasticky feeling timing belt, but this is actually you know, rubber. It feels decent, so that feels okay. And the first problem I saw was I opened the box and I have 2 tensioners, so I'm like, oh great, what am I not gonna have? And of course they did not include the small O-ring that goes from the back side of the water pump to the pipe under the intake manifold. So I'm already stuck because I can't put it back together. I would reuse the old one, but it's pretty much like plastic, and it's so brittle. So I got 2 choices. I gotta wait till Monday to go to Toyota to get one, or that's it. I don't have another choice. So at least I can pull some of this off and then get it ready to go on, but I can't put the water pump on. I can't do the timing until I get that O-ring. There's a nice thick water pump gasket. I don't know what these have factory. We'll have to see. I know they use metal ones on newer cars, which is kind of the way to go. Sealant is a no-no on water pumps. It's even got the top gasket here for up top. It's got the big O-ring here for, I don't even know where that goes. I can't think off the top of my head. Yeah, big water pump. Because the only one I know of is the small one here. Probably goes to some other top part or something. I don't know. Cam seals, giant cam seals. These are the ones that go over the slide over the inner gear. I'm not sure if I'm going to replace these or not, just because, you know, it's just more time wasted. New crank seal. And we've got our new pulley here. I mean, it looks decent. The quality is decent. The only thing is the bearing quality. Obviously, it's not a Koyo or NTK. But this, I mean, it looks the same. So we'll see what happens. I'm not expecting it to explode. And we save probably $300 or $400 going this way. So I'm all about it. So that's it. First step, I guess we'll just take the belt off. We'll take all this other stuff off. And then I do have to swap this metal plate here because the cover broke and the bolt is seized in there. So we'll take off the sensor. Hopefully this will slide off. If we come into any problems, we will inspect behind the cams to see if there's any traces of oil. It doesn't look like it, so we might be okay with leaving the cam seals. Crank seal, definitely want to change that just because it's right here and it just pops out, pops in. Again, so we've got 10mm Allen here on the socket for the tensioner. This is like a little tube almost. Ow, that hurt. Ah, it's on there. Okay. It's not gonna go anywhere. Let's bring out the big guns. I think this is normal direction, counterclockwise. Hopefully. Yep. So you can loosen that. You can take a 12 and then loosen the tensioner first right here. I already loosened this a little bit. Knock these off. I also forgot we have to, so there's also a little rubber piece that sometimes falls off. And remember the orientation. So there's a washer under this in between sandwiched. So what I was saying, let's get this out of here. Just bend our crank trigger in the process. Fall on that. There's a little rubber cap that likes to stay in here. I'm going to make sure this comes out. It doesn't get stuck in there when you shove the new one in. I also forgot that we have to drill the cam sensor or the crank sensor mounting hole. Where is it? Right here. This is broke. I have to grind this flat, center punch it, and then drill it out. And then kind of clean out the inside. Just so the new sensor, because the sensor end was broken, the connector. What else? So that's that. We've got a 14 on the right, and that idler pulley. Just like so. And it's not out yet. Okay. Good. And I forgot to mention, there's a mark where the keyway is here. You see the little Woodruff key? This is kind of at like a 2 o'clock position, and there's a mark on the timing, or the oil pump, that also aligns with it right there. And then there's 2 marks on each of the cams. So this has to be turned just a little bit. There's a mark here, and then that has to line up with the mark up here. So that's basically like that. And there's a dot on the right one, and it has to line up with the hash mark above it. So I gotta adjust those a little bit, get those back where they're supposed to be. I should have done that before I took this off, but it's okay. These are 17, I think. No, 19. All right. Of course, my tools are all over the place. So what we can do here is simply just turn this a little bit counterclockwise, and it'll hold, depending upon where it is in the rotation or revolution, it'll hold position. It won't snap back. So line that up, and then this was already lined up here. Oh, you see how that just flipped back? So they flip probably 30 degrees or so, because that's where the cam was. So this is actually in between opening and close. It's in between lobes right now where it's lined up. If you push it any more to the right, it'll snap that way. If you push it to the left, it'll snap that way. All right, so now we can take our belt off, and actually the belt is stuck on the crank pulley. The UZ is super easy to timing belt. I think I mentioned that last time. If you turn the belt inside out and then hold it like this, if you could see what I'm doing, that's another good way to see any cracks in between the ribs. This one looks okay, actually. The problem is the outside. Look at that. So this definitely could have snapped at any point in time. Probably not soon, but definitely don't want to run this for any kind of distance. So this should slip off the crank like that. Throw that in the garbage. Now we are probably going to have to pull this off with a puller. There's 2 holes on the crankshaft pulley, and what those are for are your puller. So you put your puller here, it pushes against the crank, and then it pulls the pulley off. I'll go find that. It looks like I still can't tell. Oh, yep, it. So the water pump It looks like it has a metal gasket because there's a little piece hanging out here. So I think that's what we'll find when we take it off. And the aftermarket ones, you know, it's not metal, but it's thick. It's really thick fiber. So take it for what you will. You know, you could use an OEM metal gasket on the aftermarket water pump. Whatever. I'd really like to know, you know, longevity on these things. How long do these aftermarket ones actually last without the bearings coming apart or leaking or whatever? Never really seen any videos on that comparing them to original, because they're just basically copies of the OEM Japanese made parts. So there's two 12mm bolts on the water outlet thermostat housing up here. I'm thinking this just pops off. Maybe not. It should just come off of there because there's the big O-rings for the top part. I don't think it's held in anywhere else. So could be wrong, but I see it moving. Coming loose slowly but surely. Man, that is in there. Well, I'll come back to that. But here is our bolt type wheel puller set. So this is going to allow you to do. I had this in the ISF video when I had to remove the crank pulley, the ATI super damper. But same concept. You never want to pry anywhere in here for obvious reasons. I think these are going to be M6 by 1 if I'm not mistaken. It could actually be smaller, but it looks to be M6 to me. Let me get this all set up. This is gonna go like that, and then we'll pull it off. We got the puller all set up. This is just snugged down. It's nothing crazy, but 14mm on the end, and just turn and you'll start seeing that pulley come off. It's not on there tightly, but just the size of it and how it's put on, it just seems like it's never going to come off. But this very easily can do the job and pull that pulley right off the crankshaft. Might lose your wrench halfway across the room, but that's normal. Okay, almost there. And got it. Just like that. Now we can clean up all this rust. We can swap on another pulley that looks a little bit better than this one. Let's take a peek in here. But we got just a ton of like rust. And you can actually, now you probably can't tell or justify or say this is not leaking oil, but it's just, you might as well do it because it's right here. And you don't want to get any kind of leaks, especially on a higher mileage engine. It makes sense. This plate came right off, just as I thought. There's just a couple bolts holding it in, and it slides under the camshaft pulley. And then we're not getting any evidence of oil leakage on the head here, so I think the cam seals are good. So I think I'm just going to leave them alone for the time being, and then put them in the glove box or something for the next timing belt change, or whoever buys the motor. I'll put it in a little baggie and then include them with the motor. And then typically for getting this out, you can tap in a screwdriver or something against like the crankshaft. show you what I mean in 2 seconds here. Typically you can use just a small flathead, put it against the crankshaft side, tap under the seal, sometimes at an angle, and you can sometimes pop it out of there like that. If it's older, original, it might be a little bit harder. And I think they do actually make specific tools for this, but we like doing things the hard way. You don't want to put it against the aluminum necessarily, because you could crack this side, but at least to loosen it, I think that's okay for our purposes. There we go. Not a big seal, just a little one. And we'll just work this one out of there. Garbage. If you push on the inside, it's still pliable. Sometimes these get super hard, but the inside of this is not that bad. It's pliable. It can still leak when it's pliable. So like I said, you might as well just throw on the new one while you're here. And they even copied like the actual color of the OEM one, so yeah, I don't know what they're doing over there in China, but they've got their seals down. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit with brake cleaner, put the seal on. To get the seal in, you can use like an extension and just kind of tap it in. You could use the old seal, put the old seal on top of the new one, and then tap the old seal to seat it. They do make, like, obviously seal installers that are the correct diameter, and I don't know if they'd clear the crank here, but deep well installers, and then tap it on that way. Okay, we've got the old seal and new seal. Let me try to move this light so it's a little bit better. Maybe not. I'll have to work with that. So I've already cleaned up the crank itself with some Scotch-Brite just to get a better movement on that pulley when we're pushing it on. It should freely slide in and out. I did find a cool thing I didn't know existed. WD-40 Specialist penetrant with like a articulating arm. I thought that was kind of cool. You can make this into whatever shape you want. And then, I don't know. It's probably been out for years, but I just never knew. Okay, so we'll put the new seal on like this, and then we'll try to fit it by hand to see if we can even do that. At least get it started. Not having much luck here. I don't know if you want to add a little bit of oil to help. I'm trying to think where I might have a little bit of oil. Power steering pump that's leaking. Okay, I hope this is, sometimes again you buy a seal from these kits and it's not a very good fit. This one kind of is not fitting the best. I don't like how this is fitting, but it's probably just me. So it fits on backwards. That tells me at least the inner and outer IDs are okay. So we're gonna just work it around the crank. Hopefully it's just really tight and it's not comfortable pushing this on because it's bending the inner, like the spring is coming out. All sorts of problems here. This is why OEM seals are better, because they're just manufactured to a higher tolerance. You're not going to have these problems. Like an original one will just fit on there and you'd be done. But this one, we're like stretching the inside. Yeah, this is not good. But whatever, we'll give her a shot. So we can get one side on, and it just kind of gives up the ghost on the other side. This is not good. This does not feel good at all. This is terrible. It's just folding over this inner lip, and we lost the spring again. So I might have to buy an original crank seal now too, because this is just not working correctly. Let me see if I can get this on off camera so I don't yell too much. 20 minutes later, still working on this garbage. It's junk. You cannot use this crank seal. It's too soft on the inside, and every time you push this over the inner lip of the crank and try to get it started into the oil pump, what happens is the inner lip folds out, so it folds kind of like an inside-out t-shirt, and then the spring pops out on the inside. So it's like no matter what angle you do this at, it's either not big enough or the inside is too soft, and then it just ejects the spring. Like the spring just falls out. So I'm pretty pissed. This is garbage, garbage, garbage. This kit is garbage. I'm glad I didn't do the cam seals first, because who knows what problems I would have had with that. I'm going to have to now order an OEM crank seal, and that's going to take a few days. And I'm already 2 weeks behind on this build. I got to get this car out of here. I got to get it sold, and this is just a problem. It should not, like, they've sold hundreds of these online, and I don't understand how, because nothing fits correctly. See, it's like you're almost there. You've got the top on, and as soon as you start putting the bottom on, it fights you and rolls inside itself. Let me see if I can actually finagle. Nope, it's just going to pop out. I don't know. I'll keep going on it, but this is not looking good. It's just, there's something wrong with it. It's just a little too small or something. It's not working. Given up on the crank seal. Doesn't work. That's it. That's the end of the story. Doesn't fit. It's too small. So I gotta go buy an OEM one. And it just makes me wonder, is anything else going to not fit and not be correct? Is the timing belt going to be the right size? Is the water pump going to fit? So I'll work on that next, just to see if this entire kit was a waste. Because right now it seems like it's a huge waste of my time. And now I know why it was only $70 whatever, because you have to buy half the OEM parts anyways. Just stupid. I think this is all we've got here. Water pump should pop off. What am I missing? I've got all the bolts. I don't get it. Well, the pain and struggle continues. I don't know why I can't get this stupid water housing off. It's just held on by the top thing, the top O-ring. This makes no sense, man. Why? Should just pop on out. Straight out. Jesus. Well, someone's been in here because this has black sealant on it. This O-ring is completely gone. Well, maybe not. It's just all okay, the other thing, so these 9mm gloves from Harbor Freight, these used to be awesome, and now they rip like nothing. They just pop right off. I don't know what's going on. It's just a bad weekend. It is a bad weekend. All right, what am I missing? Why is the water pump still on the engine? I don't understand. It should just pop off. Okay, it's loose at least. I've never had a water pump this stuck on before. Looks like it's just stuck onto the O-ring on top. that I also don't have because the kit didn't include it. They forgot to include it in the kit. Well, keep loosening it, I guess. Hopefully it'll pop off one way or the other. I don't want to mar the surface, obviously, and make a leak. There are tabs under the water pump, so if you do need to pry, they give you little spots to do it. That's safe, but I'm not having any luck. It's just stuck. Like, it's stuck. That's it. That's all there is. It should just come bloop, straight off. Okay, I've got a massive pry bar here. I don't understand, man. One little O-ring is holding this whole thing on. It's just a single O-ring on a pipe. There we go. Good grief. Getting stuck everywhere. Look at that. Just this one O-ring. Right here. And this is also garbage. No way I can reuse this because it's, well, for one, I bumped the pipe. That's not good. And number two, the O-ring is kind of torn and still soft, but can't use that again. And here, this is like a hybrid metal. Oh no, it is. No, it's metal. It's metal. It's got like a rubber kind of material inside. So it's similar, more expensive than the Amazon one. And honestly, I know a lot of people actually buy OEM gaskets with and then use the aftermarket pump. I have seen that. Let's get more of this yellow crust out of here. This doesn't fall in anywhere important. I still don't know what this stuff is. Okay, we will also use our pad here just to clean some of these surfaces up, because this is, what is this? Is this hole supposed to be here? Right here? Maybe? I don't know what this is. Like some kind of hole that goes nowhere. Well, whatever. So we'll just use this to clean the mating surface. Again, no sealant on here. Just use the gasket. Since I have to order parts anyways, I'll probably order a factory gasket just so there are no leaks from the paper one. I can actually try the paper one here to see how this fits. I mean, it probably fits fine, but I don't know. Would you trust a paper gasket when the factory one's metal? I'm just not feeling it. So yeah, this is not good for the Amazon cheap timing belt kit, because we have to buy a gasket. Well, I mean, factory water pump, I don't know how much those are, 150 bucks. Technically, water pump is 2 kits. So if you do have to buy parts, you know, it's still cheaper in the end than buying an entire factory T-belt kit. So you got to kind of mix and match parts. So there's nothing really I can do till later this week again. Got to find parts, OEM parts. We need this O-ring on top here for this pipe, and then gasket, crank seal, and then in the meantime I have to drill out the crank sensor hole, and that's it. Just a waiting game. Sucks, but it is what it is. So we'll continue this once we get some parts. It's a few days later, and we have a special delivery from the parts man. So first of all, we have this made in Japan rear main seal. This is only 13 bucks on eBay or wherever. I could have got an OEM one, but I think those were more like 30, 35. And I did test fit it, and it seems like it fits okay. I also got two dowel pins. These go on the trans side. They actually locate the transmission, basically on opposite sides of the engine. I'll show you when I get to that, but important. And then we have the OEM crank seal, what we've been waiting for this whole time. This is black. The old one was brown. I guess that's how you can tell visually. Sometimes they'll do that, where they'll mark parts with paint, or they'll change colors, and that way you know it's the new one. And look how much better this fits on than the other one. So we'll do that first. Then we have our water pump O-ring, or the outlet, the water pipe, right here. So this one, very important. Make sure to lube this up with something coolant, or like there's some silicone spray or something. And then the metal water pump gasket. So this is metal integrated with like a brown rubber type inner gasket. I just like this better than the fabric material or paper material they have in the aftermarket one. So we're still saving money. We're just replacing some more vital components with OEM versus that cheap aftermarket stuff. Also, what arrived are the motor mounts. So surprisingly, these were like 15 bucks a piece, and they're Chinese, and they're just like cheap rubber, but it's better than no motor mounts. And we're trying to stay in budget because this is just kind of like a parts car almost. I'm sure they'll work fine, but they're just not going to be as smooth and refined as OEM. And that's it. So I'm going to get some oil to put on here just so it goes on easier. And then we'll do the water pump gasket and jump right in. Alright, so we've got this little bit of oil on here just to help, and you'll see how much better this fits. Like, it just goes exactly where it needs to go. And we were literally fighting with that aftermarket one for, 20 minutes trying to push the bottom, push the top, and then this, it's just, that's it, it's in. Now what we need to do is just gently tap around the perimeter, and typically it's safe to use like an extension, because this, oh, that'll happen too, it'll pop out the other opposite end. This is pretty rigid, this outside. What you don't want to do is use something that'll bend it or deform it. But for the most part, all my life I've been using something like this, or a 10mm socket, just to tap it in there, and you got to work it back and forth. Obviously they do make actual tools for this, but you don't have that. That's pretty much it. You just want this, essentially it's either going to be flush with this aluminum part, is a safe bet. So when the extension hits the aluminum part like that, that's good, you're done. You don't necessarily want to bottom it out, because it could grind or deform the other side, or bend the seal or whatever. Looks like this bottom is, it's kind of sticking out on us a little bit. So I will finish that up, but you get the idea. It went on perfectly. And then as far as the water pump goes, this is not going to be Let's first figure out which way it goes on here. I am blind. Oh, I'm using the wrong holes. Okay, there we go. This doesn't need any sealant or anything either, so this just goes on, water pump goes on, and you're done. So that's good. And then we're going to do our small O-ring on top here. And then this one, we're going to want to make sure we'll find some coolant and then put some coolant on here right before we put the pump on, because we don't want this binding up or anything. Okay, that is good and in the groove. And then we do have a larger O-ring here. That is actually for this piece, which will go on later, but you can put the O-ring on. That just goes on here, where that goes into the other half. So that's good. And then you are supposed to have new water pump bolts, because the originals are aluminum, so they do stretch. The kit has replacement ones here, although these are steel, and I'm not going to use them. I'm just going to use the factory ones. I don't have new ones, but you know, again, you're supposed to use new ones, but like I said, we're trying to save some money, and I don't think we're going to have a problem with it. So, slide this on here. Oops. Watch, this won't work now either. I gotta take this pulley out because that's in the way. I got ahead of myself. Okay, watch these wires on the cam sensor, otherwise these will break. Okay, now what we have to do is get the water pipe. This pipe is a little bent, as you can see. We're gonna have to push it that way, and then push the pump on. So it's gonna take a couple hands here. Basically, need a screwdriver to not touch the O-ring, but just get it over a little bit. Okay, and then I gotta find some coolant so we can lubricate that. But I'm gonna put this on and come back once that's done. Okay, we are gonna do things by the book. So we're gonna start with the tensioner pulley here. This is supposed to come pre-coated with like thread locker, so I just put a little blue on there. The other problem with this cheaper timing belt kit is this fitment is super tight, so you have to almost pound this in where it should be pretty loose. So that's another downside to going with the cheap timing belt kit. And then don't forget that washer, like I mentioned earlier, I think. You basically have to like hold this in place because the entire assembly is going to want to turn like this when you tighten it until you start threading it, and then it'll start to spin on its own. Just greatly increases the chance of like cross threading it, because it's just not, you shouldn't have to do it this way. Okay, so I think I've got it started, hopefully. So you can hold the tensioner towards the left if you have one of these kits, so you can tighten this inner bolt. Again, if this is my personal car or a car I was going to like resell, I would 100% use a factory ASIN or Toyota timing belt kit. Now this, according to this diagram here, is going to be 25 foot-pounds. So we have our torque wrench, and set this to 25. Okay, that's good. Now theoretically, when the tensioner raises up, it's not going to be an issue. It's going to be able to lift this, no problem, but you can't flop it around by hand. That's all I'm saying. So we'll leave that there. That's good. Number 2 idler pulley, which is this one here. That is also 25 foot-pounds. So we will grab our, should be a 14, yeah, 14. This is also 25. Okay, this should obviously spin freely because the belt's going to be riding on that. Water pump spins freely. Okay. Now we can get into the nuts and bolts of things. So we've got the installation for timing belt. This is assuming the water pump is already done. So actually we're gonna do the water pump first. And those are torqued to 13 foot-pounds on all these bolts and the nuts. There's only 5. One of these is wrong actually. So we should have these 2, and this one up top should actually be over here. So what I'm going to do is pull this one out. This is the downside with just pulling everything out and not labeling anything. But you know, what are you going to do? So I'll put this over here where it belongs. And I had to buy a new tensioner assembly, and I don't think that's coming today like it's supposed to. The old one is just a little noisy, the bearing, so I don't know what I'm going to do about that. So there's this nut, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, basically these 4, this one, and these 2 little bolts here, and then this one up here. So those are your torque specs to 13. And one of them is actually, you'd have to move the tensioner to torque this one. So I'm going to set my other torque wrench to 13 foot-pounds, and then go from there. Alright, so 13 foot-pounds is 17 newton meters. We have this set here, 1, 2, you should alternate this as well, just for the gasket's sake. Kind of back and forth a little bit. So we'll do this one here. Let me get this extension. Okay, that one, that one, that one, and we'll go back here, so we'll go there, and there, 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 there. Boom, boom, boom. 13 foot-pounds. Again, this is a metal gasket. I don't know if earlier models had sealant, but if it has a metal gasket, use the metal gasket because that's typically what it's supposed to be. Alrighty, so step 1, install crankshaft timing pulley. Align the timing pulley set key with the key groove of the pulley. So here's our pulley. I'm actually going to clean this out a little bit. It looks fine, but let me clean this. Essentially, we're going to put this over the woodruff key here, and then use a special tool to tap it on. The special tool being a hammer is fine. And then this is going to go on against the oil pump. Okay, so here we go. And remember, we Scotch-Brighted the crank, so this should go on pretty easily for us. We shouldn't have to fight with it. Well, maybe we do. It should definitely not be that tight. There we go. We're going to make sure it's over that keyway. And we can again use our extension or whatever you have just to tap it. And then you'll feel it bottom out. It'll change tone. Okay. So now we install number 1 idler pulley. So see here, 3 bond with 1344 Loctite, which we did, the blue Loctite. So this is done. Using a 10mm hexagon wrench, install the plate washer and idler pulley with the pivot bolt. Yep, we did that. We got the washer on there. We torqued it to 25. Check that the puller bracket moves smoothly. Well, it doesn't. It's tight, but that's because it's a Chinese specification one. So that's fine. Install number 2. Install idler pulley with the bolt, 25 foot-pounds. We did that. And now we should temporarily install the timing belt. Okay. Align the installation mark on the timing belt, but we don't have any installation marks on the timing belt. I wish we did. We do have that dot on the bottom of the crank pulley, like I mentioned. So we're just gonna have to wing it, because we have no timing marks. It says timing marks on the belt, but I don't know if that was just like a poor translation. And then there's some arrows here, but there's nothing else on the entire belt. So I don't know. Alright, so what we gotta do, because the crank is at TDC, this is where we want it to be. And then, like I mentioned before, we need the cams to be at the line, just like that. But if you can see, if you do that, it's gonna fly forward. So it's a very tight avenue that you have to navigate. So if we were to turn these this way, that would mean we would have to turn the crank also clockwise, but I'm not sure by how much. That's the only problem. So that's why it's handy to have the marks on the timing belt, so you know what's going on. So this side is fine because it's not going to snap either way. The only problem is the driver's side. So the only one you have to worry about is this. So what I think I'm going to do is try this just, you know, how we are. So let's see how this works out. We do want to maybe keep a wrench on here so we can manage where this goes. And also, the other important thing is we need this side to be tight. So basically, crank tight to this tight, because any slack is going to be picked up on the tensioner side. So what we're going to do is we're just going to put it on wherever, doesn't matter, on the passenger side. And then we are going to go around the water pump, and then we're going to go around this, and then we're going to come back around here. Now here's the importance. The cam over here has to stay one way, tight, over each tooth, and then we need to engage like so. Hopefully you're seeing that. Hopefully this is gonna work for us. And then this side has to go. I think we're already a tooth off. Okay, let's get one more tooth over here. Let's pull off of here. I don't have a bad feeling that this timing belt is too short or something. I think we're just off a tooth here. Maybe. Let's pull this as tight as we can. Okay. Okay, this is not great. We have like no... Oh, I know why. We can't install the tensioner yet. This cannot be bolted in, because that's giving us too much tension. We can't sneak it over the pulley. Forgot about that. So this is gonna be... Let's loosen this up a little bit. Drop this down to give us some more free play. Like so. A rock solid tensioner bracket. I love it. It's goofy. Okay, a little more. I have to remove it entirely, I don't know. We should be okay with this. Man, that is tight. I don't know if I like that. Loosen her up some more. Okay, so you can still have it on here, just loose, and then that's good. So now what we need to do is put the belt on. Now the problem is, you see how floppy this is? That's not necessarily a good thing, because what can happen is if this tightens, it could pull things out of alignment. So what we're going to have to do now is essentially we're going to have to tighten the tensioner. Actually, what we should do is just follow the directions. Okay, so we have no marks. We went over that. Install timing cover spacer. So that is just a little plastic piece right here that just kind of goes in here. So you don't want to forget that. That's probably why it's here. There's also a little gasket, if you will, a little piece of plastic or rubber that goes here. And this goes the long side down. I guess you could put some silicone or something on the back side to really seal it up, but that's fine. Figure out, okay, timing belt guide. I'm assuming that is the crank pickup, and it does say the cup outward. It's concave, convex. You don't want it inward because it's going to tear up your belt, so you need this facing outward. So that goes here. Perfect. What else? Number 1, timing belt cover. Cover. Let me find the cover. Okay, cover is just that. It's the 4-bolt cover. 1, 2, 3, 4. And make sure to have your ring on. And the reason they want you to do this is because remember that the timing pulley has a mark on it that will align with 0. Alright, got the crank pulley on, and I was thinking, since I put this on, it's at 0 now, as you can see, but the only thing that's really important are the 2 cams and then the crank. So if, by chance, this crank just spins on its own and jumps a tooth, it doesn't really matter as long as the cams don't move. So I guess that's why it doesn't matter that the tensioner is not tightened down or anything. So what we need to do is it doesn't want to go to 0. It wants to jump between the 2 in between, you know, because it's right TDC or whatever. So it doesn't want to sit right at 0. Alright, we'll skip that. So pulley is installed. So you want this, doesn't say anything about the bolt yet. It just says tap it on. Then install the drive belt tensioner, 12 foot-pounds. So the drive belt tensioner is the thing I mentioned that I need to replace, or at least the bearing, because that doesn't sound good. Supposed to be here today, but thanks to Amazon, it hasn't even shipped yet. So I think what's going to happen is I'm just going to pull off the pulley when I get the new one and put the pulley on. But I don't know. We'll see, I guess. The other one is completely seized up, so I can't use that. Yeah. So what else does it say here? So that's on install the alternator. So obviously once this goes on, the alternator goes over it, because you'll see here this is shared with this tensioner plus the alternator. So I'm going to have to remove, let me see if this can even be popped off of here. We'll do an impact or something and see if we can get this off, or if it comes off with just a regular wrench and socket. I'm okay with that. That one's a 14. I think this one comes off pretty easy, because if you torque it the wrong way, yeah, so it's counterclockwise to tension, and then, yeah, this way the pulley comes off. So I think what I'm going to do is keep the factory tensioner, because that's fine, and then once this replacement part comes, it's only $30 for the entire thing. I'm just going to take the pulley and bearing assembly off of the new one and swap it on. Top tip. You can also, if you figure out what bearing part number this is, just press this out and then press in a new one. This looks like it says something 803 LH potentially. Can't make out that first number. It's not really a number. Maybe 8 or 6 203 LH. If anyone knows what bearing this is and can provide a part number, let me know. This thing, I forget where this goes. Probably up here somewhere, I'm assuming. But we're not there yet. It's not in the directions. Okay, so I'm going to leave that and then tighten these down to 12 foot-pounds. It's going to be 2 nuts, the alternator, and then a bolt. So let me do that. Alright, so we've got our alternator in and this bracket tightened. So now what we need to do is manipulate the crankshaft position. And I did notice there's a little mark, a little stub here, which could potentially line up with the T's. So we're going to experiment here and figure out if that's the case or not. Because if it is, then we can set the cams to the T's and not worry about the thing snapping back at us. So what I'm going to do is, I should probably move the cams first. I'm hoping nothing's going to... Actually, do I even want to do that? Because we're lined up, everything's lined up okay. I don't know. I'm kind of scared to even mess with it. Yeah, because this is off. Oh boy. So, yeah, here's the problem. Now with our crank tightened up, it's kind of in no man's land between here and there. Now this side is tight, and we're still at the same mark. So what I think I'm going to have to do is get the, try getting the camshafts at the T, lining up this with the dot, and then going from there, and I'll see how that works out. But without marks on the belt, I'm kind of hopeless here, just doing what I think is right. Alternatively, I think what we can do is also turn the driver's cam a couple degrees counterclockwise, so that when the crank tightens up at 0 here, it'll pull it into position at the line. So I'll see what works better, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so as I suspected, we turned the crank and the whole assembly 1 revolution, and this is dead on 0. The passenger side is dead on with our line. However, the driver's side, we're a tooth off over here. So as you can see, we need this to turn 1 tooth clockwise, and then we'll be in time. So we need to somehow manipulate the crankshaft to the point where we can spin the cam a tooth. And you'll get that point at some point in the revolution. There's going to be slack somewhere, and that should give you enough to spin the cam. So just to illustrate here, that might have done it right there. We'll see. No, there's still a gap where we don't want it to be. Just trying to think of the best way to, it would probably be here. Now we can probably spin it, and we had to go 1 clockwise. I just don't know. Let's try that. 1 more. Okay, 0, 0. Nope, it's still off. So I just got to keep playing with this, and then getting to a point where there's slack on the right side, and then spinning this camshaft one tooth to the right. There just can't be slack here, or this can't be tight, is what I'm getting at. I wonder if I can. No, I can't really take it off the water pump. Let me. Maybe right about here, because there's a pretty decent amount of slack here. And the cam is almost there. I just don't want it to turn the crank at the same time. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna have to play with this for sure. This is tricky. So reason number 57 on why the Amazon timing belt kit or eBay timing belt kit is terrible. It took me almost 2 hours. It probably took me more than 2 hours to get to this point where we have timing at 0. We have the driver's side cam lined up with the mark, and the passenger side cam lined up with the mark. So let me explain how we got here. So normally on a OEM timing belt or ASIN timing belt, you have marks on the belt. You have an arrow that essentially points to this mark here. You have an arrow that points to this mark, and then you have can't see it here, but on the bottom of the sprocket, I've got a spare one here. On the bottom of the sprocket, there's a little mark right here. So on the timing belt, there's a mark in front of it, I believe, and then maybe 2 marks behind it or something like that. So you line up the belt on the marks to the marks on the belt. Now, if you don't have marks on the belt, you're kind of screwed, because if you put the crank pulley to this timing mark, the 0, and you have to essentially guess where this cam gear has to go, because when you put the belt on, there's slack here, and then when you turn the crank, it turns the cam, and then you're out of alignment. The tensioner is over here underneath this part, so there's a tensioner pulley, so all your slack is right here. So then again, if you line up the cam with the mark, and then the mark, and then you put the belt on, and your belt is on, and then you put the tensioner in, and then spin the crank, well, as soon as you turn the crank, it's going to tighten this part, it's going to turn this cam, and something's going to be out of alignment. So you're going to be playing this game of trying to get the crank on 0 with both cams on the same timing mark. It's just a nightmare. So is 2 hours worth your time for a cheaper timing belt? I would, at this point, I wish I've wasted so much time. I wish I just would have got the OEM kit for 300 bucks, whatever it is, 350, 400 bucks. It would have been worth everything. So we're past that. Whatever, it's done. And I guess if you still have a belt on the everything, and you can line up the marks with the new belt and then transfer marks or whatever, that's fine, I suppose. But if you don't have a belt and you're just going from ground zero, then you're kind of out of luck. So I'll explain kind of what happened. And we've turned this over a bunch of times, and it's 0, 0, 0, everything's good. So before, if this was 0, and then I started to turn it, it would end up essentially maybe 5 or 10 degrees advanced, and then this pulley would be, I think, where was it? It was off, or it was either off or it was on the mark. So I was like, okay, if this is ahead, then I have to move this back a tooth. So I'd go play the dance where you'd have to take the tensioner out, then you can take the belt off of here. That will give you slack to adjust this cam, maybe jump it a tooth and then put the belt back on, and then put the belt back on here. And I did that probably 5, 6, 7 times. I had the crank pulley off 2 or 3 times to realign the sprocket, and then make sure because on the trigger disc, the pickup, there's a flat side on the 9 o'clock side. So you can line this up and then watch the 9 o'clock side and make sure it's not a tooth or a degree advanced or reversed. So long story short, the FSM doesn't give you any real direction because they're assuming you're using a correct timing belt with the marks that line everything up for you. So that's done. We're good here. Now we can move on to the next steps. And I've turned this over a bunch of times, so I'm happy with where we are. And the tension is good because the tensioner is installed. When you pull this, just like that, that just keeps tension. If the belt wears, it'll maintain constant tension so it doesn't jump or slip. So we can do it again. We can spin it around, just make sure it's still good, but you know, it's going to be. So there's 0, and then 0, mark. There's a little dot here too on top that you can line up. And then the dot here, little dot or an indent on the back of the cam gear, and then the line. So we're good. Next steps. Here's the crankshaft holder I had mentioned in previous videos, I think with the ISF, because this doesn't work on the ISF because the ISF has a damper that comes out this way, so there's no way to get this on. What this is going to allow us to do is hold the crankshaft in place, and that's a 13 millimeter, of course. So we're going to basically stick a breaker bar on the end of this, which is not going to allow it to turn when we crank this down to 181 foot-pounds. So I'm going to tighten this down, find a bar that we can hold on to, and then torque that to 181. So here we just have a jack, floor jack on the ground, and then hooked up to here. That should hold everything in place while we torque this down to 180. Or it will rip the aluminum jack handle. That's also a possibility. Okay, yeah, I need a steel jack. Alright, take 2. 180. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Fan bracket. Install the fan bracket with 2 bolts, 2 nuts. So I think we're missing something here because we only have 1 stud There should be a stud here, I believe. Well, maybe not. 1, 2. Where's the stupid thing line up? 2 nuts. So those are our studs, and then 2 bolts. Well, it doesn't make sense. There's more than that. 2 bolts and 2 nuts. Install AC compressor, timing belt cover. I'm assuming AC compressor goes over here. Alright, let's try to get this on. Probably shouldn't have to tap, but it's not lining up, so we have to tap. So we have a problem. Well, that might go on. There's a little stud, little whatever you want to call it, dowel pin. I think it should clear that. But again, OEM, it would just go right on. Since we're dealing with this unknown aftermarket water pump, we can't say. It's definitely a tight fit. I don't want to break anything, but it's just not going on. It's not going over that stud. Let me tighten down some bolts and see if it'll go. I don't know what else to do. Alright, next step after the fan bracket, you do want to leave this one, no bolt in here, because then we have number 2 timing belt cover. So this is the number 2 timing belt cover according to Toyota. There's a bolt here and a bolt here into the water pump, and then the fan bracket, and then the water pump. So this just sits in here like so. Make sure it goes under. It has to click in under the tensioner. Okay. So you should have 2 long bolts. I'm assuming that these are the ones for that. They are. Those are 12 millimeters. So you run those in. 13 foot-pounds or whatever, because those are the water pump bolts. Those hold the gasket down on the block. And then after that we need the RH, so right hand, number 3 timing belt cover. That's going to be your metal cover right here. I cleaned these up the best I could. There's a lot of like nasty stuff in here. But if you have, so there's clips that go here that hold the wiring harness. If they're broken, just pop them out, because you don't want pieces falling into the timing belt side. So this is going to go up here. I'll secure that. Next is this reservoir pipe, which I hate. That's going to go somewhere, probably on this hole here with the stud. So I'll tighten that in and then get this on here and come back. Next up we have the left-hand timing cover. So we have to remember that this grommet has to go through along with our cam sensor harness. So I'm going to go ahead and put this wiring through the grommet. And then we have to put the plug through the cover, the grommet through the cover. Actually, wrong side, I screwed up. Grommet has to go on the outside wire and then pop on the inside. I would keep the slot down just because that's the direction that water goes. Yeah. And same principle as before. Just gonna fit this where it fits. Like so. I'm gonna bolt it in. Just hand tight on this stuff. It's just 10 millimeter heads. Alright, the water outlet thermostat housing has 2 bolts. One is much longer than the other, but the threads come out equally. So short one on here, long one on this side. I don't know if there is a factory gasket or not, because this housing has like a recess in here. So what I'm going to do is just put some black 103 on here and the other side, and then the gasket will go in the middle to kind of hold everything together. So we'll go like this. You don't need much here because it's a flat surface, and then you've got the gasket, another flat surface. This is really just to hold the gasket on there, essentially. So that's that. And then we have this side. Here I want to fill that that little recess. So I don't know why they have that. If anyone knows, let me know why they have this little recess in there. Why can't it just be flat? I don't know. So we'll fill that up all nice. And then again, your 103 isn't like what you're supposed to use on coolant. There is another one, but the container that's this big is like $80 for the coolant stuff. So people just tend to use the oil pan stuff on the coolant, and people use this for the valley plates too even. Yeah, a lot of questions on that, but Lexus does it, and it's fine, I guess, so whatever. So try to put the cap back on. And then the other thing, this O-ring here, can't forget to put a little bit of coolant on there just as we're sliding it on so it doesn't bind, you know, doesn't rip. This one's not as bad as the little one we put on earlier, but okay, so that looks good to me. And we'll have this in here just so it's there. That pipe will go on, and then I'll try to line everything up here. That went on a lot better than the little one. I think these are 12 millimeters. Yes, they are. Just alternate again, you know, loosen. If the other one's tight, just alternate so they are easy to get on, otherwise you're going to cross thread them. This is looking good. Okay, I just want to do like snug, just like that. That's fine. Now we need to attach these hoses. I'm sure these hoses will split or crack or break or something at some point, and then I'll just have to replace parts after parts after parts on this car. But we just need the thing running. That is all I ask. We don't even know if the motor runs. It could be, the cylinders could be scored, rusted, I don't know, who knows. Alright, that's it. What is next? Alright, so the left-hand timing belt cover was where we left off. After that, sensor connectors. So again, this harness is supposed to have clips that hold it. Like I said, if they're broken, just pull them out and you can buy new clips and stick them in on the outside. Install drive belt idler pulley, so that would be up here. This is the pulley with let me find it here. This is another one that can make noise. So what you want to do is just take it, and you can hear this one's making noise too. So maybe I'll have to order one of these too. This one goes here. And then after that, install radiator assembly. So this is assuming it's already in the car. And then install the fan pulley, fan coupling, drive belt. That goes on here. We obviously want to wait until it's all in the car before we do that. But that's it. That's the timing belt job. Next, I need to make the transmission back up to the engine, change the rear main seal, wait for this to arrive, and then look into ordering one of these. We're getting close. We're at the point now where we can remove this from the engine stand and get it on the forklift and then work on the trans. So I got the cheap motor mounts in. You can see they have some play, flex or whatever. I mean, they'll be fine. Our wiring harness is all secured on the appropriate block brackets, like factory. O2 sensors in, heat shields are on. What I actually ended up doing was swapping both manifolds because like 5 out of 6 of these studs were broken in here, and this one had good studs. So I cleaned these up, chased them. If I want to slap the cats back on, I can do so with a gasket, or I wish they made like a 3-bolt flange muffler that you can just stick on here. I don't know. It doesn't look like you can get exhaust parts or downpipe, white pipe, anything for this anymore. What else? So we're awaiting this. I ordered both pulleys because I just can't stand to have something like that on the car. Same with this one. So those are on the way. 20-30 bucks each. From the dealer, they're over 100 each. So it's just a bearing, standard bearing. So if you can figure out what bearing it is and buy it for $5, go ahead. Alternator seems fine. We torqued that. Power steering pump's ready to go. We've got these brackets in which hold the transmission cooler lines. These are all factory bracketry again. I had to drill out this bottom hole and re-tap it because there was something broken there. Got a washer on here because the heat shield's too much rust, big hole. But aside from that, yeah, it's coming off. So I will get this on the forklift, we'll get rid of the engine stand, and then we'll put the trans on and drop her in. Alright, a couple really important things on the back side here. First, the dowels. So these are brand new dowels from Toyota. There you go, there's usually 2 per engine block. What we need to do is clean this hole out, make sure it's good to go. And then you're going to pound these in with a hammer because it's a tight fit. They're not supposed to come out. Those align the transmission so it doesn't wiggle the bolts loose and then separate from the engine. 2, the rear main seal, you can see this one's already leaking quite visibly. You've got oil in between the bottom and it's leaking down here. So we've got our new seal here, made in Japan. Honestly, whether this is made in China or Japan, or they just put made in Japan on there, I don't know. But it seems like a pretty good fit. You can just test it backwards to make sure it's, it goes over it at least. So we're going to tap this out of here, probably with the screwdriver. You can drill a screw in and then pull it out. Either way, but I like the screwdriver method, just tap it in, pop it out. The other thing we're going to do, we're going to chase these threads. All 6 of these, so there's no surprises getting the trans on later. So I'm going to take care of that, pop this out, go from there. Alright, again, same as the crank, tap on the crank side because you're not going to bend that. Sometimes you get lucky and it just kind of works its way out. You can tell this one's pretty brittle, pretty firm. Yeah, it's a little difficult. People are going to yell at me for not doing the screw method, but that works just as well. So yeah, you can see the inner rubber is stiff. It's not rock solid, but it's definitely stiff. Compared to this new one, it's very pliable. So that's what we like to see. There is a little bit of oil here. You can lube it up, whatever. Sometimes you have to remove these rear plates to get them on, depending on the make and model. But for this one at least, you don't have to do that. And we're going to have the classic, when you tap on one side, the other side pops out. Okay, that looks good. You can use the old seal to protect it, like this, and then, tap on the new one. Or you can do it backwards, whatever you're feeling like. We're almost there. We just got to clear this side a little bit more, and then we're good. So I'm going to grab something to tap this in and be back. New seal is in. It's pretty much flush with the case here. I'm happy with what it's looking like. So that should be good. Obviously you can spray it down. So if it happens to leak again after you install the engine and run it, then you'll know that your seal install was bad. But that looks good. Now I have the 12 by 1.25 tap, and I'm going to just chase all of these threads, because I've had situations where you get a trans in and you try to bolt it in and the bolt just stops. So you're in a little predicament there. So I'm gonna do all these. They're all the same. Well, actually these two, why is there a stud here? Looks like a broken bolt. Okay, I'll have to examine that. We definitely have two. These are bolt holes, and these are as well. So this is definitely a broken bolt that I'm going to have to extract, or hopefully just pull it out. These are actually smaller. These bottom four are 10 by 1.25, I believe. Yep, 10 by 1.25 for these bottom four. Again, there's dust, there's dirt, there's crud in there, and if you try putting a bolt in, it's just not going to be a good time. These always go straight through so they don't bottom out, so that's a good sign. Easy to deal with in case you have problems. Let me grab my extractor, hopefully we can get this one out. I'm going to go through and tap them all out, or chase them. Alright, we've got everything sprayed with brake clean. We've chased all of our holes. They all look good. Now we're going to install our dowel pins. And pretty much you just want to line it up in the hole and then make sure it's straight before you tap it until you hear the sound change, and then it's in. Chances are you will never get this out. It's going to be very, very difficult to get that out of there. What happens is they'll, that one went in a little bit easier. What happens is they'll just kind of wear down eventually. Usually not, unless people are pulling the trans in and out or messing with them. And then you can put a vice grips, channel lock, something big on there, and then kind of wiggle it up and down while tapping on the back side. That usually gets them out of there. But those are brand new. You always want new ones if you're messing with them or pulling the old ones out. Now I'm going to show you how I am going to get this out. My extractor's failed. This is just a little bit too short. So what we're going to do, we're going to grind this flat, center punch it, drill it, hopefully extract it. If not, just keep drilling it, and then eventually it'll fall out, and then we can tap it out again. So let me grab the grinder, and I've got a cheap extractor kit here. It probably won't work because I can never get these to work, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to cut this with the cutoff wheel. Good. Try to get this as smooth as possible, as flat as possible. It's just going to help drilling. It's going to make it a little bit easier. Let's change angles here. Now, I would say that the center punch is the most important part of this process, because you want to get that center hole started for your drill bit in the absolute center of this bolt. So that looks pretty good. Just run that in a couple times. Get nice and set. Now you've got a pinhole in the middle. I don't know if you can see that or not. Hopefully you can. Now with that pinhole, you're going to find just a small drill bit. Smaller the better, because those go through pretty easily. And then we want to go all the way through the stud or the broken bolt. You can see we're a little off center, but that's pretty good. This might take a bit, so I'll come back when it's through. The extractor set has a drill bit and a corresponding extractor. You want to find something that can get through the hole and is as big as possible compared to the stud. Hopefully this will work. This is the drill we're going to use now that we're through with the small drill bit. And once we're through with this, we can try the extractor. So that's how that's going to look. Yeah, it's a little... The only problem is I don't want to drill the case, so I might go smaller and then try to wing it, because I don't want to mess up that. I don't want to hit the outer wall. We're just a little bit off center with this, so we'll try coming more center with the big one. These drill bits also are pretty questionable. So almost. Alright, so that's through. Now we can try to get that on there and see what happens. This is not all the way through, but it's pretty close. So you can just use a tap handle. And what you're going to do is it's a reverse thread, so when you loosen, it's going to tighten and then hopefully pull it out. But like I said, I've tried these so many times and they just don't work. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I don't want to, if I pull any harder than that, it's gonna, I don't want it to break. So what I think I'm gonna have to do here is just drill it out bigger. Yeah, this is just not working. Let me get some leverage. Might be a mistake, but I'll do it for the show. Put a little bit of leverage on here, like we're loosening a bolt. Yeah, no, that's not working. So what I'm going to do now is just slightly keep drilling it slightly bigger until it kind of disintegrates. And then at that point you can usually get the fragments out. And once the fragments come out, you can run your tap through there. It's good as new again. So we're pretty close right there. Let me show you what it looks like. So we need to go probably one bigger, and then we can start fixing this. And once you get this drilled out enough, what actually works pretty well is the center punch. You can punch in the old bolt and then it'll come out in pieces. And then usually, sometimes you don't even have to chase the threads out. So let me go one bigger or two bigger drill bits and we'll see what we end up with. Alright, I ended up with a 5/16 drill bit. And the drill bit actually caught the stud and you could see the stud turning a little bit. So then I was like, oh, maybe the extractor will work. I put the extractor in, oops, and I was able to turn the stud like, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch back, and then it just locked up. So what we have here is kind of the fragments of the old bolt, and now you can use the center punch to kind of loosen these, and then just work. Hopefully then you can pop this whole thing out of here in fragments. So this will kind of pop it away from the threads. And it works really well. And if we do mar up any threads a little bit, we can just run the tap through there. See how it's working like that? You can just kind of pop it off and it'll hit you in the head. So I don't know at what point our tap can work through here. Definitely not yet. There's a lot of material in there. So we're going to have to... Can't really drill it anymore because we can't go bigger, and you know, we already put the drill through the 5/16 and it kind of went straight through. There's really nothing more to drill out of there. So we're going to have to just, I don't know. This is the hard part. You don't want to drill more. I'll have to see actually if I have a, sometimes with the tap kit, the M1.25, it'll have its own drill bit that you can use for a hole like this. So I'm going to see if I have one of those. If not, I'll just keep messing with this until we can get the tap in there at least and then fix the threads. But just a process, you know, at this point. Like, do you drill it out more? Do you mess with it? Do you have some kind of a grinder bit that goes in there? It's kind of up to your own thing. So I'll go find it, see what I got. Alright, so we got it. You can see one last drilling we did, and we actually pushed out what was left of the old bolt. So this kind of popped out the other side. Tweezers, pull it out, run the tap through, and we're good. First couple threads are a little shaky, but the rest of the hole is perfect, just like factory. So no need to do a helicoil or any kind of thread repair kit. You know, that's good right there. It'll hold whatever you throw at it, hopefully. Yeah, it does go in a little bit more than I like, but try a bolt. Here's one of those bolts here, 10 by 1.25, and there we go. Looks good to me. That looks good to me. Alright, so now we've got to put on the ring gear and all that. There's an order for this. So there's a spacer here. That goes on first. If you forget that, you're screwed. You're going to be in big trouble. Then we've got the ring gear. And after that, we have the final spacer. Flat part down against the ring gear, and the little lip is up, facing out. Okay, that should just go on. Let me get this off. I'll figure out torque specs for this, but I want to line this up first before I get too crazy on everything. It's just not as smooth as I'd like it to be. Alright, ring gear, or flywheel bolts, whatever you want to call it. These are 65 foot-pounds, and then the ones going through, no, 61 and 35. So they did have what looked like red thread locker from the factory or something. I'm just going to use blue because it'll be fine. So you want to make sure, obviously, all your holes line up between your 3 plates. And this is a 14 millimeter 12 point. And we're just going to hold the crank on the other side to torque these down. Hopefully I can remember the torque specs because it's very late. I'm working on this far too long. 65-31, that's what we need to know. Alternating pattern, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and like a star eventually. But you know, you don't want to go 1, 2, 3. You're going to spread out the load and the torque. It's a good idea to obviously wire brush off the old stuff, spray it down with brake cleaner, even clean them, parts washer, whatever works for you. I don't know if these are a one-time use. I don't think so because they're steel. Typically, I don't know. Hopefully they're not. But if there's a set torque number, you're usually good. If it's a torque and then like turn halfway or quarter turn, those are definitely one-time use. So I'm going to find my tools, get all these down to 65, and then we are just about ready to put on the trans. Alright, 61, 62 foot-pounds. We got the crank stopped on the other side. Hopefully. Nope, we don't. Flip the button on the wrench. Now we do. Okay. Don't want to happen is the time about to go backwards and then you skip time or something insane like that. So I'm wondering if we can just reinforce this somehow. All right, 65, 62, whatever, 64. Just go in that 1, 2, 3, skip one pattern. Okay. That doesn't quite work out because, oh, that one's being weird. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Good. Good, good, good. There we go. We're good to go. All right, nothing cool about this. I just got to figure out how to basically wiggle this on the flywheel. Get that center piece in there. And, you know, work it back and forth while not killing myself. It's be a very fine battle. But basically you have to wiggle it back and forth and get the angle exactly correct between the engine and the transmission so it slides on. You can get a bolt started, pull them together. So I'm going to work with the forklift here and see what I got to do. It looks like I'm just a little bit off. I got to lift the engine a little bit and then it should slide right on. Okay. So I've got two jacks, one supporting the engine, one lifting the back end of the trans, and then this jack unfortunately just bleeds down, so it's going to be hard. But once you get them level, you can tap very gently the back of the trans where the drive shaft bolts to, and it'll work its way on. Just very slowly. You can get someone else to help too, obviously, but in this situation, I don't have anybody else to help. So we're just going to try to, I'm going to put something under here that holds this so it doesn't drop down. Well, like I said, just wiggle it together, spin the crankshaft once in a while, make sure the torque converter is getting seated. You're not going to break the oil pump. And it'll go right on. Okay, if you've made it to this point, and you can tighten them by hand easily, I'd recommend starting with the side bolts. And then we're going to go to the other side. And now the top two up here are starting to go in thread. So you just don't want to go one side only. You want to alternate, go back and forth. And make sure you're evenly, not tightening, but pulling the transmission. Like this one's a little bit too much now. I got to back off. Because we got to tighten the right side. Make sure that one's on equally. It's not binding and it feels alright when you're tightening it. As long as it does, you're good. You just don't want to use impact tools, obviously, on them. Nothing crazy like that. After we get this secured to the block, We'll lift it up on the forklift, and then we'll put on the final ring gear to torque converter bolts. Okay, that's going on really well. So now I'll come back here, and I'll do this one. At some point we can start the top ones, but we want to pull it on kind of, from the sides first. Now we can start these top ones, the bigger ones, and then, like that, go from there. So I'm going to finish putting these on, and then we'll lift this thing up. This is very, very important. Once you get to about that much gap between the engine and the transmission, stop tightening the bolts. See that? See that gap? You have to, at this point, spin the crankshaft on the other side. That's going to spin the torque converter and seat the torque converter into the into the flywheel. And then, because if you tighten it, try to turn the crank, you won't be able to turn the crank. It's bound up. So if you don't do that, tighten these down, you're going to break your oil pump inside the trans, and then you're screwed. It's a bad situation. So make sure to do what I said. Wiggle it on, have somebody else turn the crank, or you turn the crank, but it's imperative that the torque converter seats on everything, and then you'll hear it pop and close together. You never want to use these bolts to completely tighten the trans to the engine. There's about a 1/4 inch gap or so. That's what it needs. Do not forget that step, otherwise you'll be in a world of hurt. And you'll be pulling the trans at least at a minimum to replace that oil pump. Now once that's done, you can go ahead, do the final tightening of the trans bolts, and just so you can see, that's how much more it needed to be tightened. So I'm going to tighten all these, check the crank again, make sure it spins. If it does, we're golden, and we can put the wiring harness on and go from there. Lift this thing up and do the bottom and the flex plate. All right, here we go. Wish I had 2 people for this, but we've got to do with what we've got. So we're looking good so far. Just need to come up a little bit and forward. This is way better than an engine lift. Come on, guys. So what we need to do now is basically lower it a little bit. Before, the problem was the cats. I should have taken those off because those should not have been on there. But basically we just got to come down a little bit and then also angle it and clear the trans. So I'm going to keep working this and you can watch. Alright, here we go. We're all lined up, and we need to lower her down gently. And forward. Whoops. Right now we got to clear the prop crankshaft thing, whatever that's called. Okay. We need to go down and then up a little bit. Alright, we cleared the trans. I don't know if you can see that or not. Probably not. Back there, we just need to clear the pan. So we got to kind of come up and then down again. And it's free, it's loose, everything looks good. We just got a couple inches to go to clear that pan. Going in like a glove. So I'm just gonna finagle this in, get the engine mounts in, get it seated, get the forklift out of here, and then that's it. We got another video coming. We'll talk about just wrapping up the final steps, and then yeah, we'll just have to do a part 4 on this because there's just way too much going on. So thanks for watching. Sorry it's a lot of information, but it's very important stuff with the timing belt and all that. But yeah, till next time. See ya.